Hey everyone, Carl with Whiteboard Daily here again. Let's do the back squat. Let's talk about the back squat. That's a move that I have not drawn up on this YouTube channel yet. It's a very common move. You see the back squat performed all the time. But the things with the back squat is that, especially for new movers, they might be able to sit down, stand up, but once you get a bar on their back, they start to freak out and they do things. They start to act like they've never squatted before in their life, when really you squat almost every day. I mean, if you sit down on a toilet and stand back up, then you're doing a squat, really. And so a lot of people, they kind of fail to make that connection. So we're going to talk about the back squat today. I'm going to kind of draw about it. So the first thing you want to do whenever you do the back squat with the barbell is you want, with any movement, there's always three things that you always look for if you're coaching somebody or if you're coaching yourself. But there's stance, grip, and position. For stance, you want to have your feet in a squat stance, and that's going to be relatively shoulder width apart, okay? And then your feet are going to be slightly turned out, pretty much whatever's comfortable for you to reach a full depth in your squat and then stand back up. It's going to vary different for different people, but that's generally what it is a shoulder width stance. And again, feet are just slightly pointed out to the side. Might change for other people. Some people might have straightforward feet. That's fine, whatever. Everyone's different, but that's the general rule. Now for the bar, you want the bar to rest on the upper back. You want to make sure that your grip on the bar is going to be wider than your shoulders. So obviously you can't grab it closer than that, and you don't want to grab it too wide, but you want to grab it just outside your shoulders, and you want to point your elbows back. Now, why do you want to point your elbows back? Well, you want to create a nice shelf on your back, on the top of your back, to rest the barbell. If your elbows are forward, it's going to put you in a poor position. It's easy for the barbell to slide down, or it might put your back in a bad orientation. But you can keep a nice neutral spine by pointing your elbows back, relatively back, and holding onto that bar. You want to squeeze that bar with your hands. Have a nice full grip on there. Okay. There's many back cues that I cover off on Whiteboard Daily on Instagram. Hopefully, I might talk about some of those as we're moving through here right now. All right. So first thing you want to do when we're doing the back squat is we're going to send those hips back, and we're going to bend at the knees. We want to keep that bar over the middle of the foot right here, okay? Not over the heel, not over the front of the toes, but we want to keep the bar over the middle of the foot. That's going to keep everything nice and balanced right there. You push through the midfoot of your foot. You got a tripod down here with your heel, and then the tripod on the two sides of your foot, your pinky toe and your big toe. That's what you're pushing through the entire time. If you're focusing on just pushing through your heel, it's easy for your heels to come up. It's also easy sometimes to rotate side to side and have a lateral movement with your feet, but you want to keep everything nice and solid. And a good cue to think about is push through the whole foot the whole time. And the whole foot refers to that tripod of the foot. Now, the first thing that typically happens too, split second, if you really want to do a photo finish or photo slow-mo, is that the hips break just a millisecond before the knees do. You want to keep that neutral spine as you travel down, but now we're getting in the motion. Okay, you want to control it as you go into it. So next up, we're going to sink down just a little bit further. Again, keeping the weight over the middle of the foot. That's why I like to draw things from the side here. And we're going to go ahead and all the way go down to depth. Now, there's different trainers out there. There's different people who say you should squat to a certain depth. For me, and what I normally follow, my standard is hip crease goes below the top of the knee. It might be different for some people. I'm not going to argue about that. I understand their reasoning. But hey, it is what it is. Here's the deal. It's nice to work through a full range of motion, and typically the full range of motion should be at least to that hip crease right here, this hip crease going below the top of the knee right there. If you're sitting down on the toilet, if you are sitting down on stairs to tie your shoes, if you're sitting down on a bench, we're talking about quality of life here. And so if you're just training in partial ranges of motion, then you're missing out on a lot of other areas that you could be strengthening. And so maybe not an end range that we're talking about with your butt all the way down to the ground, but at least we want to hit a standard. And that's another reason I think it's important to have standards whenever you're training, because it's easy to, if you don't have a standard, then it's kind of easy to be like, well, that was an almost rep. For example, like if you're doing a bench press. Now, how about this? If you're doing a pull up, okay, and you pull, and the standard should be, I'd say, chin over the bar, okay. But if your chin doesn't, if you're like, oh, a pull up is just to about right here, well, then sometimes you might get here, sometimes you might get right here. Then who's to say like what a rep is? So it's nice to have a standard to meet every single time and to know if you got a rep or not. And reps are important because that's how we measure our progress. That's really what we measure whenever we're exercising, quality of life, or training for life. You kind of want to measure stuff. You can measure weights and reps, but we want to have some kind of unit of measure when we do that. Okay, so we've covered off stance. Stance is your shoulder width stance, feet slightly turned out. Your grip on the bar is going to be just outside your shoulders. You want to point those elbows back. You want to create a nice shelf. You want to set tension through your upper body. Sometimes people talk about squeezing the bar apart or squeezing the bar with your hands, or squat the bar with your hands. That's another cue that I've heard a lot of power lifters say. And the idea with that is that you want to recruit all the muscles in your upper body along with the muscles in your lower body when you're doing a squat. Because it's not just, you might think that it's just a lower body movement, and it primarily is, but you can get a lot more power if you recruit other muscles in your body, not just your legs. So whenever I'm drawing, I like to make sure, a big reason, if you want to communicate movement through drawing and through stick figures, a big thing is that you want to make sure that things are like, they make sense, like the length of the leg from knee to the ankle is the same here as it is here, as it is here. And so that's a good lesson that I kind of picked up along the way. Okay. So back squat, you're moving through this range of motion where your hip goes all the way down to below your knee and then standing back up, and it's complete at full extension there. Another thing I want to take note of before I send you guys off is this. Make sure that your torso, we talk about the neutral spine, and that's why I always kind of draw that slight little S curve there. But another thing that you want to think about is your torso is going to be at its strongest when it's upright, when it's at the way it's designed to be. Okay, you get your lumbar curve. Now, if you start to bend forward, okay, and you're bending over, you see that? That's going to be a weaker position. Also, you're going to be further away from your center of gravity, which might be down through here, okay? So things are going to be heavier the more you get away from neutral, or the more you get away from vertical there. So try to keep your torso as vertical as possible as you're passing through that back squat. I'm not gonna lie, man. I love drawing. I love to see movement drawn out in stick figures, and I hope you guys do too. I hope you guys enjoyed this little eGlass class. I hope you guys picked up some things that you might share with your athletes if you're a coach, or if you're just a mover yourself. Hopefully this helps you kind of further understand what the back squat is. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in. What's the next movement that you would like me to draw? I love doing this. I love sharing things that I've learned along the way. So hopefully it brings you some value, and I want to continue to do that. So thank you so much, as always, and there's more to come in the future. Thanks, guys.